was because our conference got canceled and we thought we wanted to do something until the rescheduled conference, which was for May, which isn't going to happen, but we're hoping for September, but we're thinking that's not going to happen. So we just might be doing webinars forever, but stay tuned. We do have something planned. So just keep watch of the newsletter that Lois has been doing a great job with, and also watch the meetup as well. So it will not be held anytime soon, basically because of COVID. Let's get on to the next one. Let's come on. There we go. So this is just to make sure everybody behaves themselves. I'm not going to read the whole thing like I usually do, because I think most of you have been here many times. And we just want everybody to be kind and respectful and ask really good questions like you always do. And please remember to donate. We had some great members, someone joined today and donated, which was greatly appreciated. And I will be putting the link in the chat, so I will do it several times during the night. So if you can please donate something, that would really help us pay our expenses for Zoom and other expenses that we do incur, such as the website. And the other thing you can do is go to the website and press the donate button, which I put at the top of the page now, so you don't have to hunt for it. And also you can become a member on the website, $20 per year, as you know. And a reminder that during the Q&A, please do post questions in the chat and I will read them out. So those listening via the stream will know the questions. And some people direct message, so not everybody will see the questions. So I will read them out. And then at the end, if we have time, we'll just have a sort of a free conversation with Richard. And I'm going to introduce my guest now. He looks a little different than this. He's gotten a little bushier, and I'm so excited that he was going to do this. He is a friend of mine. I met him through Susan Gerbeck from Guerrilla Skeptics, and through her weekly trivia, which I highly recommend you joining, that she started in June. And he's also the host of the Skeptic Zone podcast, and it's one of the longest running skeptical podcasts. He's a professional origamist. I hope I said that right, Richard.
That's good enough.
Yeah, these earrings here he made. And he's made multiple appearances, lots of media, TV, radio, skeptical conferences around the world. I'm so amazed that he has agreed to do this for us tonight. And I will introduce Richard Saunders, who is living in Sydney, Australia, where it is right now 23 degrees. I just looked it up half an hour ago. In Calgary, it is minus 27. So 50 degrees Celsius swing in temperature. So I'm going to be doing something a little different tonight. I am going to spotlight him because I learned that from Susan Gerbeck. And we're going to see how that works. What that means, I believe, is that we're just going to see what Richard has to offer, and you're not going to see yourself. So a reminder as well, we are streaming on YouTube and Twitter. So if you want, lots of people I can see have just got their names up. You don't have to have your picture up. Just a reminder, you can turn your picture off. So the streaming just started. All right, I'm going to spotlight you, Richard, and then away you go. Thanks so much.
All right. So thank you very much indeed. What a pleasure it is to speak for people in a country that is dear to my heart. And I know you probably get a lot of speakers around the world who will say something like that. In my case, it's absolutely true, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now, bear with me here. I'll see if I can do what we were doing before, Adrian, and getting this this screen to be shared. So let me know if that's happening. Thumbs up.
That's perfect. Yeah.
All right. So thank you again. Once again, what a pleasure it is to be here. This is the adventures of an Australian paranormal investigator, ghosts, psychics, and mysterious footprints, and a few more things. And there's me, Richard. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. This is absolutely wrong. That's better. There's me, Richard Saunders, as I look these days. And that is actually taken from a gig I did the other day. I'm also an actor. I do TV and movies and things like that. And I was hired to be a zombie for Disney+. There you go. I worked for the mouse. And the reason I'm growing this beard and not cutting my hair is I hope to work for the mouse again soon. My agent tells me it'll be soon in a new action and adventure movie where they required a beard. We'll see if that comes up. I've signed various non-disclosure forms, so we'll just have to guess and wonder what I'm going to be doing. All right. as Adrian said, yes, one of my great passions in life for many years is origami, folding paper, and I do photography and jewelry. And the top one there, you see both the earrings and the other image there is my favorite piece I ever invented, which is Pigasus, the pig with wings, flying pig. That was at the request of James Randi. In 2007, he said to me, could I invent a flying pig? And I was amazed when I actually did it, because it's not always easy to invent something to order like that. And I was very pleased with that. And the dinosaur is one of mine too. And I've done a lot of photography. It's one of my outlets, creative outlets. So there we go. That's me in 1968 or 1969, still from a home movie my dad made. We were living in Tribune, Saskatchewan. So when I say Canada is dear to my heart, it really is. My earliest memories are of Canada, living on the prairie. It's a little wheat farming area. Some of you may know it. With, you know, flat in the little Tribune has a wheat elevator and an ice rink and not too much else. And I remember my toboggan, and I remember the garter snakes under the steps. So one day I'll go back and have a look at the Tribune, Saskatchewan. I wonder if anybody has been there. It's a very tiny little place. So let's start talking about the paranormal. And one of the things about me is I'm what they call a Bigfoot skeptic. It's a generic term that means somebody who's interested in the classic skepticism of the 70s and the 80s, that sort of stuff. So ghosts are considered to be a classic area of skeptical study, research, and all the rest of it. And that's what I like to talk about. There are other skeptics who specialize in other areas. Climate change denial, for example, and vaccination denial, which I am keenly interested in, but it's not my area of expertise. So there's me about 10 years ago. I get called into TV shows and whatnot to talk about ghosts and things. And that guy sitting next to me is bills himself as a psychic by the name of Mitchell Coombs. And we were brought on, a skeptic and a psychic, the old story, because somebody had come up with a photograph taken in the room or the attic of William Jenner. Was it William Jenner, the guy who invented the polio vaccine? And took a photograph, and it looked like there was a mysterious figure in the photograph. So this is the photograph there on the left. And if you can see that, you know, it can sort of look like someone sitting down. And then I got that image and I outlined all the things I could see. And of course, there's figures and weird things happening all over the place. Now, this is classic pareidolia. It's low light. There's maybe a bit of dust around. It's the lens they were using at the time. And you can see shapes and objects and things like that. And for those of you who don't know, pareidolia is the ability of the human mind to make sense out of random images. The classic is seeing a dog in the cloud or something like that, or a face when there is no face. And there's many examples of that. All you need is two circles and a line, and your brain will determine that's a face. So that wasn't very impressive, although the psychic, of course, was almost forced into the situation of saying, yes, that must have been a sitting ghost there. Well, it's a pretty strange sitting ghost. I don't know why ghosts need chairs. I really don't. Maybe more seriously, though, some years ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago, somebody contacted the Australian Skeptics, of which I am a life member, and I've been the president of the organization in the past, because they were quite worried because they worked at a school here in Sydney, and they had serious worries about it being haunted. And we don't treat these people like they're silly or crazy or anything like that. This is a genuine concern. If we can help, we can help. So a little group of us went out to the school at night, walked around, and it was one of the rare times I was able to find a logical and very credible, reasonable explanation for the various bits of hauntings, including a picture that would fall off the wall. And when we discovered there were loose floorboards under the picture, and if you stood on the other side, the wall sort of moved. That lower left one you can see is, I think that was the part of the medic bay. I can't remember. There were mysterious lights appearing on the ceiling, and we soon discovered there were reflections from the ceiling fan. And this one was interesting, the staircase. He said, this staircase has got a reputation of being haunted. Well, okay. And he said, if you climb the staircase, by the time you get to the top, your legs feel tired. Now, of course, you climb staircases every day and you don't even think about it. But if you climb a staircase while thinking about your legs, wow, they feel tired at the top. Of course they do, because you've just used them. But if you don't normally think about that, it doesn't mean anything. So having that idea implanted in your head all builds to that sort of thing. But I think the upshot of this whole adventure was, it was nice to give somebody a reasonable, clear, no-nonsense explanation to put their mind at rest. No, it wasn't really a ghost who made these things happen. Here's how it could have happened. I think that satisfies. One of the things we still get to this very day, and it's been going on for years, especially since the advent of digital cameras with flashes, are what they call ghost or spirit orbs, or which we know as dust orbs. And these are very common. It's a classic case of a pareidolia again. Some people swear they see faces and all sorts of things in these little flashes. But as you can see by the image down there, it is really a simple case of the dust floating near the lens of the camera. The focal length of the lens is concentrated beyond where the dust is. When the flash goes on, the flash bounces off the bit of dust completely out of focus and back into the camera. And this is the result. And many years ago on a ghost tour investigation, we walked along a dusty track. And I got my digital camera out and I was clicking everywhere. And of course, the whole scene was just crowded with ghosts. There was hundreds and hundreds of ghosts. Again, it's nice to be able to tell people this is the reasonable, rational, no nonsense, slightly boring explanation. You don't have to invoke weird little tiny mini ghosts. Mini ghosts, maybe that should be a movie. Well, everybody forget you heard that. I'm going to talk to my agent. Mini ghosts, okay. Psychics. One of my favorite topics of all is the people out there who call themselves psychics, who fall into three broad categories. The first category is the sincerely deluded. People who really and truly think they have special connections with spirit guides and they can tell the future. And they're nice people and they don't mean harm and they're not out to con anybody, but that's their life and they really believe it. The second category are they're a bit mixed. They know what some of what they do is fake and they're happy to put on a bit of a show, but they also believe some of it. They also think the spirit realm is real. Maybe it needs a bit of help, but they can fudge the edges. The third category are the outright shonks, scam, con men and women, the con sharks they call them. They know full well that the spirit realms and the voices is non-existent, but they do their live shows and charge their money. Adrian, I'm just getting a message in the chat. I'll just carry on. So let me know if there's anything.
I'll monitor the chat, Richard. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
That's okay. So not so many years ago, I judged these photographs by the color of my hair. You see, I'm a bit grayer there. So it was about 5 years ago or something like that. There was an anniversary, and I can't exactly remember what it was, an anniversary here in Australian Skeptics about our $100,000 prize we have for, it's like the James Randi used to have the $1 million prize, and I was involved with that. So the skeptics here in Australia have $100,000 if anybody can demonstrate under mutually agreed conditions, all fair, that they have psychic or spiritual power or anything like that. And I was invited on a morning chat show to talk about this $100,000 prize. And when I arrived at the studio, waiting in the waiting room with me was Ruth Phillips, who is a psychic who sees ghosts. I didn't know she would be there. So I was a little bit, I don't mind appearing with these people, but the producers just didn't mention it to me. So I thought, well, I'll make the best of it. So what I did is I had a novelty check with me, which we'll see later, for the $100,000. And I knew she would refuse it because they always do. So on live TV, I held up the check and offered it to her. And there she is refusing to take it. And I thought, great, it was all worth it. And I wrote a story about it, which we published on our website, and it got thousands of hits. But that is the best photograph I could have ever hoped for. Offering the fair, here's $100,000. Oh, no, I can't take that. It was just wonderful. I was, 10 years ago, I was a judge on a TV show called The One. I was the skeptic judge. And all those people there you see were the contestants. They all claimed to have psychic powers and talk to dead people and all the rest of it. And that woman above me in the other photograph there, she was on the first series. She was the eventual winner of the series as voted by the studio audience or the audience in Australia. So that was a lot of fun. And I got to see a lot of these people in action. And I learned a lot about how they use their words and how cold reading works. Cold reading is the psychological technique of appearing to be getting information about somebody. It's a bit different to hot reading. Hot reading is when you know information about somebody, but you pretend you don't. So you pretend it's coming from the ether, the mystic realms. And with my long experience in this, I could relatively quickly sum up who amongst all these people I thought were innocent but deceived, and who I thought were more or less show people, knowing full well that the spirits and the all that sort of thing is just not there, but they play along with it. Other investigations I've done with the Australian Skeptics, and this is going back some years now, almost 20 years, because I can tell with my dark hair, I'm sitting right with my knees tucked up there. So one of the first ones I did was an Indian man from Fiji, I think it was. His family contacted the Australian Skeptics and said that this man can read palms. And it was amazing, and we would be amazed, and we'd pass over the money, and here's somebody who can really do it. He's Mr. Sen, I think his name was. We wrote about it in our magazine. And what we discovered after he read myself, Ian, who you can see in front of him, and Linda, my friend there in the foreground, was it was just stock standard cold reading techniques, lots of generalizations, lots of questions. But we were certainly convinced that he didn't realize that, and he really thought he had mystical, magical powers. It's very interesting. We'll get to that more in a minute. Now, that guy you saw me sitting with before, Mitchell, with the ghost story about the pareidolia in the studio there, he turned into the regular psychic on the morning show here in Australia. I'm not sure if he's still doing it. And I discovered on their website that if you wanted to have a reading from Mitchell, you could have to fill out a little form and tell Mitchell a little bit about yourself. I thought, wow, that's unusual for a psychic. And then I discovered that once the person from the studio, from the audience, the viewing audience comes in the studio, Mitchell spends some time with them to warm up or tune up and have a talk with them before they come on camera. And I collected many of his 5-minute segments talking to people from Australia who have been brought into the studio. If I'm not mistaken, it's either 100% women or 99% women. I cannot ever remember a man coming into the studio. And it gave me a lot to work with. I could see his technique and what he was saying and what information he was using. Now, why do some people, many people, most people who think they have magical, mystical powers believe it themselves? Well, here's part of one of the many reasons. Let's look at this story of somebody who catches a fish. They catch a fish and it's a small fish. And what happens? On the retelling, the fish gets a bit bigger. Oh, you should have seen the fish I caught. And then it gets a bit bigger and a bit bigger until, wow, it was a great fish. You should have been there. And that's okay. You know, the story grows and it's exaggerated, and it's a fun story, but you can see how things can be elaborated upon and they can grow. Now, when somebody goes to see a psychic, either to get their fortune told or hear from the dead or something like that, whatever the service is, you can see in the little box there, it can be an alt med practitioner, a naturopath, a homeopath, or whatever. It's usually a psychic or something like that, or somebody who has a medical device. The client normally goes in not being skeptical. They're quite open-minded indeed, and quite vulnerable. They're usually very impressed by whatever goes on. Now, if they're a believer in psychics anyway, and they go to a psychic and they don't know how the tricks work, they're going to come away very happy. 99 times out of 100, they'll be very happy. And when they go back to that person for their next reading or a future reading or something like that, when they walk in the door, they sit down, they're giving this person all their positive feedback. You were great before, it all came true. I don't know how you did it. I've come back. This feeds upon this person's ego like you wouldn't believe, and reinforces to them what they already know, what is true to them. And it keeps getting true because they keep getting reinforcements. When the happy client then talks to a friend or relative and to recommend this psychic, alt med practitioner, whatever the case it is, and the friend then goes and says, listen, my Aunt Mary thinks you're really great. I've come here on her recommendation. The reinforcement continues. Again, it's just reinforcing what they know is true. They don't think it's true. They don't believe it's true. They know it's true. It's as true to them as anything is true to us. It's how the world works. They have these powers. And with this reinforcement, I'm not surprised. I can sincerely recommend the book I've been relying upon for well over a decade. It's called The Full Facts Book of Cold Reading by Ian Rowland, who's in the UK. If you look that up, if you Google it, I'm sure you can still buy it if you're interested. I usually have a copy of sitting. Yes, there it is. Excuse me for a minute. I should have prepared, shouldn't I? There we go. There's the real thing. So I always have that handy. I've thumbed through this many times, and it's dare I say, it's the Bible of cold reading. It's the technique, it's examples, and it's full of very good educational material for magicians and mentalists and things like this. But I've learned a lot about that. And when you learn this topic and you see a psychic in action, you can say, aha, and pinpoint what's going on. But how does some of this work? I mean, it's a complicated subject. There's many aspects to it. But let's look at just one. Let's look at you, whoever you are, or an individual goes along to see a psychic who can talk to the dead, for example, or get information from the mystic realms. Now, one of the things they do is they can speak in such a way that they put the onus on you to try and unravel what they're talking about. And one of the classics is there's a father figure or a mother figure. A father figure or a mother figure. You'll hear this many times. So let's look at this. There's you and there's your parents, represented by the little dots. Your grandparents, all right? So we've gone back another generation to great-grandparents. They're not a huge chance you know your great-grandparents, but your grandparents certainly will if they're still around, and your parents will remember them as their grandparents. So it's all quite close by. So if you can see, we've gone back only 3 generations and we've got 14 ancestors to deal with. We can go back another generation and that increases exponentially, as you know. Now, so when the psychic says, there's somebody coming through, I'm getting the name of William, there's a father figure, he used to smoke a pipe, all this sort of stuff. what typically happens is the person whoever you are, then your mind is racing to find a match. And if you find a match with anything they say, they can claim that as a hit. And if the pipe smoking or the little dog or the fact that he liked to sneeze loud or anything like this never comes up again, it's just forgotten, and one of these things hits true, then they can work with that. Uncles and aunts. The blue lines represent your direct ancestry. The reds can be your brothers, your sisters, your mother's brothers and sisters, your aunts and uncles, their extended family, your grandparents' extended family. There's many people, and your parents will remember lots of people you've never met who are part of the family, the extended family. Your friends, their friends, and friends of friends who can also be roped into this. I'm getting a father figure or somebody who was close to the family called James. Why am I hearing James? Now, James can be practically any one of those dots you see. And if James doesn't work, there's ways around that too. I call this the piano ploy. One of the things they'll do is they'll ask you questions, even if it doesn't sound like a question. They may say to you, why am I hearing piano music, dear? It's very strong. Why am I hearing piano music? Basically, they're asking you, do you know anybody who played the piano? That, instead of saying, do you know anybody who played the piano, they're making it as if they're hearing the music and you're coming up with the answer. Now, you might say, my grandfather played the piano. Ah, yes, the father figure, he's playing the piano. Or my brother plays the piano. How did you know that? My teacher played the piano. How did you know that? If you're willing to want it to be a real psychic experience, your brain will put all this together and you'll find the match. This is a very clever ploy, because if you can't find anyone in your memory that matches what they're talking about, and especially if it's a live show in front of hundreds of people and you're being on stage, or the psychic's talking to you from the stage and you're in the audience, and you say, look, I'm sorry, my father played the guitar, but I can't think of anyone who plays the piano. What they will say, and I've seen it many times, is they'll say, well, no, this is very strong. I'm definitely getting this. Look, when you go home later on, you ask your family who played the piano, and you'll find that I was right. Now, this is brilliant, because if you find somebody who played the piano, it's a hit for the psychic. If you don't find anyone who played the piano in your memories, it's a hit for the psychic, because they know something about you which you don't even know yourself, or about your extended family. Now, if later on you go home and you ask your mother, and your mother says, oh, Uncle Jim used to play the piano, you're amazed. Wow, that psychic knew something. If you go home and you ask around and you draw a blank, who cares? The show's over. The psychic's got their money, they've gone. The audience has gone home, they'll never know. As far as the audience is concerned, is you're going to go home and find out who played the piano, or had cancer, or had a small dog when they were little, or used to have a blue car, etc., etc. It's a wonderful bit of psychological interplay. It's used by stage psychics a lot. So if you ever go to see one, just bear that one in mind. You'll probably see it. If you do, as I do, when this whole COVID is over, and go back to seeing these sort of things. There's the prize. $100,000 from the Australian Skeptics to anyone who can demonstrate their psychic powers. And all they have to do to begin the process is answer those 3 questions. I hope you can, I'll read those out, because I don't know how big it is on your screen wherever you're watching. We ask, say you want our money, great. We ask, 1, what exactly is your claim? You say you've got mystical powers, or you're a psychic, or you're clairvoyant. Well, can you define it for us? So we're not chasing a wild goose chase here. We need to know exactly. We need to know under what conditions you can do this. So if we come to test you, we're not being unfair. If you say to us, I can't do it on Tuesdays, we have to know that, so we don't test you on a Tuesday. Or if you say, I have to have 3 bottles of champagne to get ready to go, then fine, that's a condition we can agree to. The third one is, whatever your claim is, how successful are you? Are you 80% successful? Does it happen sometimes? Again, we need to know all this in order to even hope to start constructing a fair test. We're never going to construct a test which isn't fair to what the person is claiming. Most people don't get past question 2. Some can answer question 1. Many cannot simply get past question 2, let alone question 3. Now let's talk about another of the classic of skeptical investigation. This is cryptids, where we come to mysterious footprints and things like that. And wow, you've come to the right place. I'm talking from the future in Australia, and we're just crawling with footprints and monsters and I don't know what. Rex Gilroy, who's still around, is Australia's most famous cryptid hunter. And there you can see him with just a small example of the wonderful, giant, comical footprints he's collected over the years. And they look like something out of the Flintstones. And as I wrote in a report about this event, it was a psychic fair once, I said, somebody has had a great deal of fun collecting or making these footprints one way or another. So there's a point where what you're presented with is so comical that you're sort of a bit lost to know what to do. But Rex Gilroy, that's his whole life, for decades, has been collecting these giant footprints. It's amazing. They must be just about everywhere. Here's another angle of them, and I think there were, yes, okay, the first one were what we call yowies. I'll go back. Okay, which is the Australian equivalent of a Bigfoot. It's a big foot, you've got to admit it. The other ones he has are giant cats. Oh, yes. You can see by the, yes, Adrian, I can tell you're amazed. Giant cats and giant emus, I guess, giant birds. Look at that footprint. It's almost big enough for a dinosaur. So, I mean, I don't know how he does it, but he goes out into the wilderness. He finds all these tracks. It's just remarkable. And there's an image of somebody drew many years ago in the 60s, I think, 60s or 70s, of their car being attacked by a yowie, which is our equivalent of the Bigfoot. And here's from 1976 in a magazine. There he is, Rex Gilroy, talking about yowies and footprints. He's been doing this for decades and decades and decades. And that image there is just utterly ridiculous. I've never really studied the scale. I mean, that yowie's got to be 3 times bigger than the human figure. That's a big monster. And here's same guy again in 1998. There we are, holding up 2 more very, very interesting looking footprints. But yes, yowies, which is our Bigfoot, and big cats, I guess, are the 2 biggest ones people talk about. And every year there'll be reports of what they call the Lithgow panther, Lithgow being a city to the west of Sydney up in the hills. And people swear, of course, that they've seen a real wild cat like a black panther. And you always hear that it must be from an animal escaped from a traveling circus. Year after year after year after year. These traveling circuses shouldn't stop letting their big cats out all over the place. And we come to the practicalities of it. Well, bring us some fur for DNA analysis, surely. Or if there's panthers living out there and they were from an escaped circus in the 40s or the 60s or whatever it is, then there must be a breeding population and they'd be part of the ecosystem. Sadly, these things have never materialized. And just recently, one of the reporters here on the Skeptic Zone, Dr. Pauly, who you can see there, the woman with her hand up to her chin, she was interviewed by a magazine up in Queensland, because up there too, way up in Queensland, they have people running around finding mysterious footprints and looking for yowies. I mean, I don't know, I'd like to go out and look for yowies too. It's like going out one night and having a few drinks and looking for UFOs. The more you drink, the more no, I don't want to say that, the more fun you have. I went to a UFO talk once, and these people were dedicated UFO hunters. And they said they were camped out in the wilderness one night, and the UFO came, and it was, wow, great. And they had all this advanced camera equipment. One of the side effects, or one of the effects of the UFO, of course, was it zapped all their cameras. Oh, well. Clever aliens. The classic of all classics in Australia, and it's one of the reasons the Australian Skeptics started, is water divining or water dowsing. Here you can see lots of people with lots of different method of water divining or water dowsing, including myself in the 90s there, taking part in a water divining test, looking very young, good grief. And in 1980, James Randi flew to Australia and conducted a series of water divining tests, which helped kick off Australian Skeptics. And if you want to see the documentary made at the time, it's called, with great imagination, James Randi in Australia. I've put up a very good version on YouTube at the Australian Skeptics YouTube channel. It's 40 minutes and it's well worth your time. It's a classic of skeptical investigation, and you can see James Randi at his best. But we've tested hundreds of water diviners over the last decades here in Australia. And as you can imagine, they've yet to show under proper conditions that they have any special magical powers. But it is a lot of fun. I loved it. I'm collecting some water from the stream with my friend Steve, and we take them up to be part of the test, and we talk to people, and we spend all day, and then have a great big dinner at nighttime. So what's not to like about testing psychics and water divining? It's great. I really enjoyed it. It's just part of the setup of testing the paranormal. I mean, if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it. And I also made my own documentary about water divining called the Mighty Mitter Muster Water Divining Test, because we tested people at the Mighty Mitter Muster, which is like a big rodeo, Australian rodeo. And there's some of the shots from the video we made at the time with the help of some children who are all adults now, some of the sons and daughters of local skeptics. We all did little bits of water divining and things for the video. And there's me in a classroom going through a test which students can do to test water divining for themselves. And that was the upshot, the Great Water Divining DVD, which is now no longer available because the videos are up on YouTube free for everybody to watch anyway. But that had a series of water divining tests and challenges and things like that. So let me talk a little bit about what I do every week now, and I've been doing it for 12 years, every week for 12 years, which is podcasting. And my show, as Adrian mentioned before, is called The Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia. skepticzone.tv is the URL. And all those people are my current reporters. All those people help contribute to the show. Not every week, of course, some of them only every now and then, but they're all involved in one way or the other. Including at the very top there, Michelle Bickersma, who's had a very long-running series, about to do 40 episodes now, of logical fallacies. And listeners to the Skeptic Zone will know logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma. But all those people there, including right in the middle, it's Tim Mendham. And he is the executive officer of Australian Skeptics. And he does a segment on the show too called The Book of Tim. He's also the editor of the Skeptic magazine here in Australia. But what a lot of fun that is. It's mostly a lot of fun. It's very frustrating when I'm recording and birds start making a lot of noise out the window, or next door decides that they're going to renovate their kitchen, or the planes fly over. Podcasters know what I'm talking about. One of these days, I'll buy a soundproof studio with rubber walls. But what an adventure podcasting has become for me. I've met so many wonderful people, including my friends from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, a very big and popular skeptical podcast. And there's Michelle Bickersma again with myself and Steve Novella from the Skeptic's Guide when Steve and the gang were here in Australia. And I had the pleasure of speaking with the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast at Google, or maybe 6-7 years ago. And we did demonstrations and tests at Google, the Google headquarters. And I got to write and produce my own radio play based on skepticism and space adventures, which is called Solar Flare. And if you go to the skepticzone.tv and scroll to the bottom, you can listen to this radio adventure. It goes for about an hour, I guess, and we fly in spaceships and we battle evil. And it was a lot of fun to write a script and to perform it and then to put it together as a radio play was one of my ambitions in life. And it was a lot of work, but it was more fun than I can possibly tell you. Great fun. And I get to meet so many wonderful people from the podcasting and skeptical world. There's me with Michael Marshall from the UK Skeptics. He's the editor of their magazine now and the Good Thinking Society, the wonderful Celestia Ward and Pascal and Ben from Squaring the Strange, just to name a few of the people who I get to meet. And I sure hope this COVID situation ends soon because Adrian's invited me to Canada and I'll be there. That's why I'm growing the beard secretly, actually, for next winter, I think. And I can't leave without mentioning my 20-year friendship with James Randi. Maybe I'm starting to look like him now. That's it. Maybe there's got to be a reason for this. And Randy and I became very close friends on his frequent visits to Australia and my visits to the United States. I became involved with the James Randi Educational Foundation in their $1 Million Challenge. He and I clicked very early on and became fast, good friends. And when he came to Australia about 5 years ago to do a tour, I was the one who interviewed Randy live on stage, as you can see in that photograph there in the lower left, in a number of cities. So it was a wonderful friendship. I learned more from him than you can possibly imagine. And one of the highlights was one afternoon, we had to kill a bit of time, so we sat around swapping spoon bending stories. And afterwards, I thought, you can't get better than that. You just can't get better than that. And it was just a very, very sad day for us all, of course, earlier last year in September, I think it was, when James Randi died. But what a life. So let me wrap up with something I've been doing with the help of lots of friends from around the world. And this project has been going for many years now, but it's nearing its end. The Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project. I have gathered in the order of, and the numbers up there, what's the latest number? Over 3,000, let's say over 3,200, something like that. Psychic predictions made and published in Australia between the years 2000 and the year 2020. I have every one of them catalogued, as you can see on that spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is extremely long. But what's more important, I've got the original sources copied. So on my hard drive, I've got every prediction in its original form, be that from a magazine, a radio show, a TV show, whatever the case may be. And me and the crew over every week get together via Zoom, and we spend 2 hours marking predictions. And we're down to under 500 now. And that's a fun process. It can be exasperating. It can be very difficult. And I thought I'd just show you a few of the ones that we've been dealing with. Oh, to cut to the chase, by the way, since we've marked so many, currently the number of predictions that actually come true from Australia's psychics over the last 20 years is in the order of 10%. In other words, the other 90% are a mixture of plain wrong, too vague to mark, expected to happen, or simply unknown. Not many unknown, we usually can nail it down, but many are simply too vague to even try to judge. Here's some. In 2001, Angela Danton predicted in that magazine there, the year of the snake. The year of the snake is not one in which you take risks. It's the year of reversals and upheavals, all very unsettled. Now, I don't know if I came up with this or Adrian, but we call this waffle. We categorize them all. You know, if it's a COVID-19, we call it, this is a COVID-19 prediction, or if it's economy, if it's politics, royal celebrities, this one's waffle. And Adrian then added waffle with Canadian maple syrup. Here's another one. I'll cut to the chase. Major Earth changes begin. Well, okay, great. Another one. Realistically, 2012 is about transition and change, cultivating flexibility and surrender in your journey, restoring the world to a higher, too vague consciousness and weakened state. I think too vague slipped in there. That's the mark we give it, is too vague. It's just too vague to mark. It's just waffle. Oh, this is a good one. This for 2020, a massive shift coming in everything. Now, see, the thing is, this person will say, well, I meant COVID-19, and there was a massive, massive shift. But from our point of view, it's like, well, no, it's you can't say something so vague and then put meaning to it after the event. That's just not how it works. And there is a typical day of the prediction project. There you can see Adrian and myself, and I can't quite make out who that is, but normally that screen's full of people. And the two cats usually tipping over my equipment as I try to do predictions. And in fact, they're right there out of screen now, practically doing the same thing. So I really want to thank you very much for your time and attention today. The website is for the podcast is skepticzone.tv. Please check that out. It's a lot of work by a lot of people, and we try to make an enjoyable hour for you to listen to every week with skeptical news and information. And the skeptics in Australia, the Australian Skeptics is skeptics.com.au. But now I'll switch it back to Adrian while I take a quick sip of water.
Perfect. I guess I will need to stop your screen.
I think I can do that.
Yeah.
Can I do that?
Yeah, you should be able to do it. Perfect.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you. And I am going to, okay, just give me 1 second. Share, I wanted to spotlight myself as where, oh, there I am.
Right.
And
I think I'm still spotlit.
yeah. Okay, it's only letting me, it's not letting me spotlight myself. I guess I can't do that. So we'll just leave you up there spotlighted if that's okay.
I've removed the spotlight pin, so I think that did the trick. So you're spotlighted now for me.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so we do have some great questions. Just strap on your seatbelt. Are you ready to go here? Thank you so much, Richard. That was awesome. I learned something new, as I always do in these presentations, but I thought I knew everything I could about ghosts and psychics, but obviously I didn't.
Oh, I don't know everything about.
No, I love it. The first comment is from Neil, and he loved your term mini ghost. He says he might just copyright that, so you might.
No, forget I said that. It's got to be the next cartoon or the series, right? Mini ghost. Ooh, what was that? Mini ghost.
But I thought that was really funny. I didn't know that those little dots, they actually see mini ghosts in them.
Sometimes they do. Yeah.
I didn't come across that when I was doing my spirit photography page. The next question is from Pam, and it says, how do psychics who really believe that they have a gift deal with being exposed?
They don't. They're not, because they have a gift, and any expose on them is a non, what's the word? It's not comprehensible. Let me put it this way: if you were to say to me, that car you drive, it's a flying car. I said, no, of course not. Of course it's not a flying car. No, here, it's proof. Look, see, here's a picture of it flying. No, it can't be. This is their thought, you see. Mm. They know that they have the gift. So if they're exposed, their brains will find a way to rationalize the expose, which normally means is the skeptics don't understand it, or the skeptics have tricked them, or it doesn't work like that, or whatever the case may be.
Or your skeptical energy interferes. Somehow. The
skeptical energy interferes. Ultimately, like water diviners, they will find a way to maintain the belief, because that's the way the brain works.
And in the case of, I know Susan Gerbic has exposed Thomas John in a sting down in the US, which was published in the New York Times Magazine. But he actually confronted that, but I don't use Facebook, I don't use social media to learn about the people, but she actually proved that he did. But yeah. They just are in denial.
Well,
Anyway, he was in
okay,
there.
I'll give you two theoretical on that. The first theoretical is person X is in denial. They believe in what they do so much that they're in denial and they'll rationalize it, like I've explained. Person B, in our theoretical examination, knows full well what they're doing, but they're not going to admit it.
No.
That's their gig. That's their livelihood. That's their income. That's their business. That's their shtick. That's their life. Go away, kid. You're bothering me.
Yeah. And from Tracy, going back to the guy with the Yowie, I had to look down at my notes.
Rex. Yeah.
So how does he profit from all these footprints, etc.? And people were suspecting books and speaking tours and things. Is that how he makes his money? Or
you know what? I wonder. I think he makes his money from books, and when we could talk at things, he would turn up at paranormal events and stuff like that. I don't think he's fabulously wealthy. He lives up in the mountains. I think he lives probably a reasonably good existence up there. But there are plenty of people around who would pay money for his opinions and
and his appearance.
Yeah.
And Spencer comments about how he loves how the footprint looks completely ill-adapted for walking.
Yes. But it looks good to hold up and say, look at this. And if you're looking for a story, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to say, amazing footprints discovered, here it is, or you're going to say, ignore it and say, oh yeah, that's just stupid. No, it's a story. That's why it gets published in magazines and stuff. It's a story, it sells magazines. It's something to fill up the page.
And the next one is a comment about Richard Dawkins doing a great expose of water dividing. Have you ever done anything with him?
I've met Richard Dawkins a few times, but our paths very rarely cross. And he's in the UK, I'm here. So the situation has never really arisen for us to do any real work together. I've had a few chats with him. I spoke on his behalf once at a scientific film festival in the Czech Republic, which was very nice. And I know the one, it's probably on YouTube, where he did a part of a little experiment where he did an expose of water divines. Well, that's not very fair. He tested them. That's what we all do. We all test their claims. We're not setting out to expose them. That doesn't make sense. We give them every fair opportunity to show what they can do and then draw conclusions.
Right. Yeah. And the next one is an interesting one too. I was asking, is it Brenda? I think it's cut off. I don't know why. I think it's Brenda. Were you involved in the Carlos fraud with James Randi?
No, it was before my time. It was when I was still in my 20s, and believe it or not, today is my 20th anniversary of being involved with the Australian Skeptics. I just realized that's something.
Oh, happy anniversary.
So thank you. But the Carlos hoax was the late 80s. So I only to the extent as I watched it unfold on TV as it was happening. And
you were aware of it.
I was aware of it. Then I saw the expose. And
I like Jim Cox's comment. I'm assuming this is regarding the psychics. You're better off with fortune cookies.
Yes, they taste better too. You get something out of it.
So when an age guesser, this is from Lois Edwards, when an age guesser asks for your name, do they use it to put you in a given decade?
Very rarely. That's
almost too specific.
Yeah, and that can backfire quite easily. Sometimes they can glean something out of that. There's a big myth that these people operate by, like Sherlock Holmes. They'll size you up by your appearance, and then that's how they get all their incredible information. No, they may get a snippet or something, and then build that into something else. Most of the readings happen in your mind. When I say you're the sitter. And most of the time, the psychic will either ask you questions or put out stuff which you need to build upon to feed back to them. So they can take advantage of if you're obviously dressed a certain way or something like that, and take it from there. The last one I went to see live, I dressed a little bit like this. I dressed up, and I had short, neat hair, no beard, and I wore a tie. And then she determined I was a professor with lots of books with marks, and judging by the way I look. But yeah, not often they'll do that.
From Neil, he's asking, how do you remain so reasonable in the face of some of these charlatans and fools?
Because it never gets you anywhere to blow your top. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I wish it did. I'd blow my top more often.
Because sometimes I bet you do get angry, especially when you see somebody taking advantage.
I went to a fair once and saw a chiropractor manipulating a baby. Or if I see a known trick, or when I went to a psychic fair and they're using a ridiculous device from Russia to diagnose people's illnesses. It's just wrong. Now, whether they believe it or not, you have to take that into consideration, but ultimately it's just wrong. So yeah, it's not good. It's not always good, but I've learned that being angry at these people only makes you feel good for a short time and doesn't really help the situation.
Well, and do you find, though, just having your podcast and doing these talks, that helps to sort of alleviate that, because you're educating people, you're going into classrooms and teaching them the science method?
I guess so, but that side of me doesn't really need that alleviation. That's all right. I just get annoyed at these people from time to time. I do all these other things because I enjoy them, not because I need a release valve from the other stuff.
So the next question is from Rob Palmer. Has Richard ever encountered dowsers who claim to do it remotely and using maps that are sent to them?
Yes, I have, but they've never demonstrated for me. That's a thing. Map dowsing, remote dowsing. Yeah, here's a map. Blah, 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 dig here. It's a thing.
Well, that's like Jeanette Wilson apparently can get rid of spirits from houses remotely.
And there's also remote healing. Ring them up on the phone or on the internet via Skype. Why not? I mean, if they believe that dowsing works anyway, there's no leap to think it works remotely or healing works remotely or whatever the case. Yeah. Because that's the way the spirits work and whatever.
Yeah. So the next one is wanting to know about the book that's over your shoulder, Flim Flam. Is it some reason that you're highlighting that?
Well, it's the classic from James Randi. I always have it in the back of the shelf for these sort of things because it's one of the books I recommend everybody read. I read it early on and I couldn't put it down. It was like the book on artificial gravity. I couldn't put that down either. And I was just waiting for it to sink in. So yeah, I've got all the books Randi wrote. I've got in my collection. The Faith Healers is a great book by Randi, but yeah, Flim Flam's a classic.
And the next one, Neil said he was not being angry at the psychics, but astonished. So he wanted that correction in. The next one, somebody is asking for you to explain the Carlos scandal. Not everybody apparently knows about that. So maybe. Okay, yeah.
Briefly, in the 1980s, channeling was in vogue. It was very popular. This is where someone says, they sit back and they do a little theatrical bit, flutter their eyes and say, I am the great spirit of Fred from 6,000 years ago. I'm here to tell you. It's a funny voice and it's perceived wisdom. And so a very, very good man who passed away some years ago, Richard Carlton, who was a reporter for the 60 Minutes crew here in Australia and a skeptic, saw this channeling and just like the rest of it, oh, good grief, what next? Contacted Randi and said, can we teach the Australian media a lesson? Because they run these stories without thinking. And so Richard Carlton flew over to Florida, met up with Randi and Jose Alvarez, who we know as Debbie now, and arranged for Jose to become this mythical channeler. They made face videos of him, fake press releases, sent it all to the Australian media. The media lapped it up. This is before the internet because you couldn't easily check. Now you could do it in a minute. And eventually they flew over to Australia. The media were at the airport. Here's this great channeler from America. He did a tour. He made a huge fuss. They had him on TV shows where his manager threw water over the host. It was all to show that anyone can get huge publicity, thousands of dollars worth of free publicity from the Australian media. And then they ended up in the Sydney Opera House with a special meeting with Carlos doing his things, and lots of people came to that. And then with it on the front pages of newspapers and everything, the next week, 60 Minutes exposed it and said, no, we've made it all up with James Randi. Now, if you want to see that, just go to YouTube and look up 60 Minutes Carlos. The story and the expose is right there in really nice quality. The 60 Minutes people put it up as part of their archives. So yeah, really recommended.
And it's also covered really well in Carl Sagan's Demon Haunted World. That's
Yes.
where I heard about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, the next one's from Mike, and it says, why can't dead people ever say their name? They only seem to be able to say their first initial.
Well, that question is as old as time, isn't it? I don't know what happens to them. As Randy said, they must get very stupid when they die.
And I've heard psychics say something about, well, the spirit realm doesn't work that way. It's kind of a fuzzy,
Yeah.
They just
There's lots of outs like that. It doesn't work that way. I can only tell you what I'm getting. They pass the buck.
Yeah.
It's not me. I'm just passing. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just passing on and all they're telling me is my name started with a K.
And that Pamela has a good one too. Is there a higher percentage of women who see psychics? And if so, why? Do you know why that is? Versus Bigfoot with men, right?
Yeah. You know what? That's one thing I haven't really done any. Somebody must have done research on that. The answer is yes. In all my experiences, yes. When I go to psychic fairs, it's 75% of the audience going along are women. I don't know. I cannot give you a good answer. The best answer to give from my point of view, when you don't know the answer, you say, I don't know. But it deserves further study, and I suspect somebody has looked into this.
Well, yeah, I've heard that if you go to a flat earth conference, it's mostly men too. So it's a very interesting.
Yeah, I've not been to one. I mean, there's the old things about men are more mechanical minded and women are more spiritual. I don't know. Yeah. These are things you hear. It could be to do with the way we're made, or it's our society. I just don't know.
Oh yeah, so Rob responded, apparently the ratio is 6-1.
Well, there you go. I didn't know that.
No, you got to read the rest of it.
To 877 to 1, with more money being spent per year by the mark.
Data from the American Association of Psychics and Mediums.
Oh, tell Mark to save his money.
Wow. So I actually have a question as well. It looks like unless there's more questions that get typed in. But
I know the question. I'll give you the answer. Yes, I love waffles with Canadian maple syrup. Here's your answer.
But I was just curious about, you said that most people don't go through more than the first 2 steps with your $100,000.
That's right. Yeah.
Promise. So if they did get through the first 2, but then they said, I'm only correct 10% of the time, is that something you would accept as being a definition of being psychic?
Every case is different. No, I don't think so. That would be just it would fizzle out then, and there's nothing you could do with that. You would hope they would come to the conclusion that their gift works at a rate which is far better than chance. If their gift works within the realms of what you would expect by random chance, there's no way we could do a test. We'd look silly,
Well, especially based on the fact that we found that 10% are right, basically.
Well,
so far, right?
I except for me. See, I've got a dice here, and I can predict it's going to come up 5 every time. Isn't that amazing? Look, 5.
Yes. So the story behind that, everybody, is that on Richard's show, he does, after the music and after he signs off, he does this dice rolling thing. And I was in the habit, as soon as the music came on, I would go to the next show, whatever I was listening to. And I never heard this back part. So here I am helping on the psychic prediction project. And he says, oh, we're going to do a dice game now. And he starts rolling these dice and asks us what our predictions were going to be. And I'm like, well, what's this dice game thing? And everyone starts giving me a hard time because I didn't, they're like, don't you listen to his show? And I'm like, yeah. But I get a little impatient and push that little button to the next show. So anyway, I discovered that Susan Gerbic always asks for 5. And she rarely gets it, like, I mean, especially on a D20, right? The odds are 1 in 20.
Yeah.
So so as a joke, I decided, because she always wants 3 5s, I would go to Etsy and order a dice. I always get that wrong. Yeah. And everything comes up 5 in different ways. So one is 14.9, one is 2.5 times 2, I think. There it is. The other one is Susan's number. And so one day, yeah, the number Susan picked. So one day, Susan got all 3 5s. And
That's
so
right.
it's quite a joke on the show. So if you do decide to listen to Richard's podcast,
Keep listening after the music.
because and what not only does he do the dice game, but he tells you what's coming in the next shows. He tells you little tidbits. I mean, there's all this stuff that I've been missing. So that's the story behind that one. All right, so we have another one here that says, what are your thoughts on near-death experiences that people claim to have had, i.e. I saw a light? Have you had any?
I've only looked at this in passing over the years, and I think the best explanation I heard, which I cannot vouch for because it's not my area of expertise, is it's the normal biological process of the brain shutting down and being starved of oxygen. Further studies have indicated that if people come back, they usually relate seeing gods of their culture, if at all. A prominent businessman here in Australia who was a no-nonsense sort of guy who died some years ago, he had a near-death experience. When he came back, he said there was nothing there. But he was an atheist. But again, not my real area of expertise.
And the next one is from Mike. Have you ever encountered a paranormal situation you could not explain?
It's akin to the question I get asked, what's the most amazing thing I've ever discovered or experienced or something? The answer to that is nothing. It's always been mundane, or it hasn't happened, or the ghost didn't appear, or it's just another whatever. But as things I can't explain, yes, when people tell me something, this happened. And without being there, I can't be sure of exactly what happened. So in that respect, I cannot explain it. And what these people usually mean, or in their heads when they're saying it, is I've had a real psychic experience, or I saw a real ghost, and you cannot explain it, skeptic. Therefore, it's doubly real. So yeah, really, it's when people are convinced and they tell me these things. And it's impossible to know what really happened at the situation, whether they really did see the ghost, or they were mistaken, or they're misremembering, or something like that.
Well, that kind of reminds me of another famous Australian, Tim Minchin, with his "Thank You God," because in that somebody says this miracle happened to him, and then he writes a whole song about it. So if any of you want, you should look that one up. That's very good. Have you met him?
Yes, I have indeed.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, he was interviewed once on my podcast 10 years ago by one of my reporters, and I had a nice afternoon tea with Tim many years ago. Yeah, nice guy.
It's another Tim, not a Mendham, though. That's close. All right, there's a couple more things here. If you believe that everything is predetermined, as in determinism, could someone feel that they are connected to this reality, or able to see the future that is predetermined?
Again, not my area. I find that very interesting. Like everything from the Big Bang is predetermined in a particular point of view, which is very interesting. I find that interesting. Ultimately, I don't know the answer to that question. If it is all predetermined, I don't know if then people can tap into that. I would have to just sort of put on my skeptical hat and say, well, I'm skeptical, but I don't know enough about it to give you a good answer.
Good answer. All right.
Well, as we've discovered from the Prediction Project, with giving them every opportunity to show us that spirits or magic or the predetermination is giving them information. There's also the fact that time's arrow points to the future. You cannot get information from the future. You can travel into the future, from
Like going to Australia.
like going to Australia. Now, if you travel, the faster you travel to the speed of light, you actually, you don't really go into the future. It's time varies and different, all that sort of stuff. But as far as we know, information from the future cannot be taken back into the past, which would sort of be a bit of a problem for all these people who say they're getting information about the future. But that's all interesting theoretical stuff.
Yeah, very interesting. So Lois has a good friend who swears that he can divine water. Is there a good way to respond, or do I just she just ignore him?
No. It depends on person to person. Some, like all the diviners who turn up to be tested. They don't hide from it. They say, yeah, I can do it and I can show you it works. They all walk away still convinced it works, no matter what. If they fail, it doesn't matter. You would probably say, look, there are videos online with water divining tests, and they would then probably say, I'm not interested. Or if they watch them, they'll say they're not real diviners. It's the no true Scotsman fallacy. Or they'll say the skeptics cheated them. Or they'll say that's not how you divine water, or write a book. The excuses are endless. But then with friends and family, then there is a line you have to draw, because it's not worth spoiling a good friendship or harming family unity.
Is there a question you could ask them to get them thinking?
I wish I knew the answer to that. Not really. No, you can say, because if they're convinced it's real and they can do it, there's no way really you can go.
Yeah. So Larry makes a comment that says water exists everywhere underground. You just have to dig far enough.
There is that. There is that.
Well, that's awesome. That's all the questions. I think that's all the ones that I've got. Thank you so much for coming. And
my pleasure.